Miami, 1985. This is the city where the war on drugs completely fell apart. What began as a fight against cocaine flooding in from Colombia turned into one of the darkest chapters in American law enforcement. On the Miami River, officers who were supposed to stop the smugglers became smugglers themselves. They used their badges and inside tips to stage fake raids, stealing hundreds of kilos of cocaine and piles of cash that never made it to the evidence room. Some of those same officers turned around and sold the stolen drugs back on the streets they were sworn to protect. The corruption spread through the department. Cops kicked in doors in the middle of the night and cleaned out dealers' homes. Undercover agents who had been trusted to infiltrate the cartels started playing both sides, skimming loads and protecting their own deals. The Miami Police Department became so compromised that officials ordered every officer to submit to drug testing just to find out who was still clean. The money flowed everywhere. Real estate brokers and developers laundered millions through beachfront condos and empty lots that changed hands at suspicious prices. Drug cash made its way into political campaigns, buying influence and protection at City Hall. While all of this was happening, the bodies kept turning up in the river and the streets ran with violence. Planes dropped out of the night sky onto hidden airstrips in the Everglades. Speedboats raced up the Miami River with their lights off. Every publicized drug bust was only the small fraction that had not already been stolen by the people wearing the uniforms. This is Miami in the mid-1980s, when the line between cop and criminal disappeared, when the city became the wildest and most dangerous drug marketplace in the country. When the war on drugs came home and the home team started playing for the other side, it was ugly then. It remains one of the most infamous police corruption scandals in U.S. history.
Was classified along with scores of narcotics-related murders back in 1985. The bodies of 3 drug dealers found floating in the Miami River. Cause of death, drowning. But that murder case set off a chain of events that would shock the Miami Police Department just 2 days after Christmas. 6 officers who were sworn to uphold the law found themselves on the other side of justice. At 5 a.m. on December 27th, Metro Police arrested 6 of Miami's finest. The 7th was arrested a few months later, all charged with operating a racketeering enterprise, ripping off drug dealers on the streets of Miami and reaping thousands of dollars in profits.
In the mid-1980s, a group of corrupt Miami Police Department officers, known as the River Cops, engaged in a drug rip-off scheme, using insider tips and fake raids to steal large quantities of cocaine and cash from smugglers rather than turning it in. The scandal erupted on July 28, 1985, when 3 bodies were found floating in the Miami River after a botched operation at the Jones Boatyard, where the officers raided a boat loaded with hundreds of kilos of cocaine. Several dealers panicked and jumped into the water, with 3 drowning while others escaped. What initially looked like a legitimate, if sloppy, police raid was exposed as a violent robbery gone wrong, involving up to 15 officers who had been systematically robbing dealers.
Last May, it was called the largest drug seizure in Miami history. A vessel outside Nudist Boatyard on the Miami River, with police saying they found 16 duffel bags full of cocaine, worth $20 million. What they didn't know at the time is that 2 duffel bags were missing. A tip would later reveal that allegedly, police officers quietly put the duffel bags off to the side for themselves to keep. Police say former officers Felix Benavides and Armando Lopez took the bags of coke worth more than $2 million. Now they both face charges of conspiring to trafficking cocaine and armed burglary. Miami police received a tip about Lopez and Benavides shortly after the drug seizure. The case was then handled by the Miami Internal Security Unit.
Acting on that information, the Internal Security Unit of the Miami Police Department conducted an extensive investigation, which to date has resulted in the arrest of 2 ex-Miami police officers.
There are some questions the police department will not answer tonight, like just what happened to the missing cocaine and the possibility of more arrests. Meanwhile, Chief Dixon says this is another step toward his goal of shaping up and changing the department.
We would deal, and I would deal, intensely and swiftly with corruption on this department, a problem that is not unique to us, just us, but extremely important to the very foundation of any police department's survival.
This is not Lopez's first brush with the law. 2 months ago, he allegedly led police on a high-speed chase. When he was finally stopped, police found more than $1,000 in the car in $20 bills. A high-speed chase down 79th Street early Sunday morning ended with police officers arresting a fellow cop. Miami police officer Armando Lopez was charged with reckless driving after police chased his red Porsche at speeds over 90 miles an hour. More than $1,000 was found in the car. Lopez's passenger was Miami cop Freddie Gasca, who was relieved of duty facing an assault charge. Friday night, Miami police officers Marcel Johnson and Arthur Hall arrested for possession of cocaine. A third officer, Henry David Cunningham, was relieved of duty for allegedly using the drug at Hall and Johnson's apartment.
We had received information from an informant that he was seen using cocaine at the apartment of the two officers that were arrested. And on that information, we had Officer Cunningham to take a urinalysis test.
No outcome of that test just yet. The recent arrest and the FBI confirmation it is investigating Miami officers has the force talking, but no one really wanting to speak publicly. I'm told privately, however, that the investigations are hurting morale within the Miami Police Department.
The rumors have been floating around for about 6-8 weeks now that there was separate investigations on our police department and internal investigations in our police department in regards to some police officers that possibly could be involved in some major crimes, including home invasion, robberies, and murder. All it has been rumors, and it's very demoralizing because the police officers that aren't involved are wondering if it's true, and if it is true, who behind their back is involved in this type of corruption, this type of criminal activity.
Kenny says morale should pick up if the bad cops are weeded out of the department.
The subsequent investigation by Miami-Dade police and the FBI uncovered a wider pattern of corruption, leading to the arrest and conviction of numerous officers with sentences up to 35 years. The suspension or discipline of around 80 to 100 Miami PD personnel, roughly 10% of the force, and revelations that some had even sold the stolen drugs themselves, it remains one of the most infamous cases of police corruption in U.S. history.
Looking for a way to burn some money? Join our co-sponsors OVO, Italia Independent and Unimatic for the 2026 racing season with world champion powerboat racer Jan Cas Korteland and F1 racer Ricardo Ponzio. Package includes bespoke decals on racing vehicles, shared media, and logo placement on merch. Get in touch for details.
There are still 3 River Cop defendants who remain fugitives. 2 former Miami officers, Victor Zapata and Armando Scarface Garcia, took off when they and Garcia's father, Dagoberto, were indicted in July of last year. When caught, they too will have to face trial or plead guilty. In all, police say 16 former Miami officers were indicted in the case. 14 now face sentencing after either convictions or guilty pleas. Even with these latest convictions, 2.5 years after the River Cops investigation began, there's still a broad stigma of corruption lacing the Miami Police Department. In the year since the first trial ended in a mistrial, 22 other Miami police officers have been named as River Cop participants.
It started with the Miami River Cops, and it has never really ended. The tally, shocking. 40 current or former Miami police officers arrested or suspended in the last 2 years, 16 suspended in just the last 2 weeks, and it is not over. Sources tell News 4 that at least 30 more Miami cops will be suspended on information provided by the FBI before the probe ends. It's a scenario that's been likened to a spreading cancer within the department. One Miami cop told us tonight that guilt by association is taking over, that some officers are scared they might be nailed because they once patrolled with a river cop. Others say, do what has to be done.
General feeling is, if you've got a bad cop out there, get him off the street.
makes it a lot safer for all of us. As far as morale is concerned, we're all upset about what we see with some of the fellow officers, and we just hope that it ends real quickly.
Miami Police Chief Clarence Dixon told his officers at roll call tonight that the probe has been dragged out and painful, but that he is moving to get it over with.
It's like pulling bad teeth. You can't pull a tooth without some pain. That's what we're doing. We're pulling the bad people out. And I will be asking the FBI to send me the entire list all at once so we can deal with it once and for all.
Many cops on the beat are concerned and angry over these latest suspensions, and they're fearful of what's coming next. But as one Miami police officer told me tonight, when it's over, it will be a stronger, more trustworthy police force.
High-profile corruption cases like the Miami River Cop scandal undermine trust within the police department by showing that misconduct could involve multiple officers and persist over time without detection. This led to suspicion among colleagues, weakened morale, and increased public skepticism about accountability. In response, the Miami Police Department adopted stricter oversight measures, including the introduction of drug testing policies in the late 1980s, aimed at ensuring officers were not using illegal substances or mishandling narcotics. These reforms were intended to deter corruption and help restore confidence within the department and the community.
No one is being forced to take the urinalysis test, but so far more than 300 Miami police officers, a majority of the afternoon shift, have volunteered to undergo testing for drugs. This after widespread publicity alleging police corruption and drug use in the Miami Police Department.
I volunteered because I think it's great. You know, I got no problems about it.
We are honest people. We don't do drugs. The majority of us are clean. We're going to prove it to the community right now.
First in line, Miami Police Chief Clarence Dixon announcing he and his staff, the department's top 30 officers, had agreed to take the voluntary test at Cedars Medical Center.
I wanted to be first. I think that's appropriate. And I hope that this will demonstrate to my people on the street, my police officers, that this administration is behind them as they have reflected they are behind it.
For the next 2 days, officers from all three shifts volunteering to take the urinalysis test are expected to line up in the basement of the police station. All are signing consent forms, with Cedars lab technicians handling the whole procedure. It's costing the city $15 a test. Officers say it's money well spent to clear the reputation of the police force.
I think it's time that we diffuse the bad publicity that's going on, that everybody on the police department is dirty, is about what it is looking like.
I would say that most of the police officers will do it. They'll volunteer.
And if they don't?
Then I'll decide later on what to do.
Details of the urinalysis testing still are being worked out. The first results probably won't be known until the beginning of the week. Police officials tell us volunteers testing positive probably will get a second chance. But the top brass so far isn't saying what will happen to any officer whose testing clearly indicates the presence of drugs.
He is not in uniform, but he is a policeman, a 3-year veteran of the Metro-Dade force, and he's under arrest. His name, Miguel Vidal, 25 years old. His own department arrested him, saying that last month on Friday the 13th, Vidal and at least 2 others talked their way into this house in West Dade. Once inside, they tied up the owner and several other victims. Police say the gunman took cash, jewelry, and other goods, but when they left, one of the victims grabbed a gun and chased the suspects. There was a shootout. The suspects abandoned their car, and inside it, detectives found several pieces of evidence linking Vidal to the crime. The owner of the home says he won't talk about the case.
How does it make you feel to know that the man they arrested was a policeman?
I have nothing to say about that.
Vidal is not talking either.
Have they told you why you're being arrested? Do you have anything to tell us about why you're under arrest?
He's charged with attempted murder, 5 counts of armed robbery, 4 counts of armed kidnapping and burglary. And the fact that he's a cop has other officers disgusted and angry.
It could conceivably create a hazard for another officer who's out there legitimately doing his job, identifies himself as a police officer, and then if we have a legitimate bad guy looking for an excuse, he can use this type of a case as an excuse. So it's dangerous for us.
Vidal's been suspended from the force without pay and booked into the Dade County Jail. Other officers tell us attempted murder is a non-bondable offense, so Vidal isn't likely to get out of jail anytime soon.
Police say Officer Roberto Quintero was carrying 4 kilos of cocaine, worth over $100,000 in a duffel bag when he was arrested. Police also busted 3 alleged accomplices, 21-year-old Kevin Evans, 25-year-old Charles Moss, and 28-year-old Milton Smith. All 4 are charged with trafficking, conspiracy, and possession of cocaine. Police say this case may be isolated, but it's typical, where an officer gets caught up with the wrong crowd and turns bad.
Is the kind of scenario that we see much more typically than some of the things that are going on right now, and that's where an officer may become involved with an outside group in a criminal activity. And it's one officer and several civilians involved in a criminal activity. And this fit that kind of pattern.
Following high school, right out of the police academy, Quintero was assigned here to Central District, working undercover with a crime suppression team, mostly investigating street crimes. Privately, officers who know Quintero say it was too much for him to handle. He was too young to deal with the kind of vice he saw working undercover.
He got involved in it, I think, through his employment and through his service to the city, and because his character may not have been strong enough or because the financial rewards were too much of a temptation for Mr. Quintero.
Quintero's attorney used that idea as an argument to get him out of jail today, asking the judge to reduce the $1.5 million bond.
In situations like this, when a police officer goes into prison, it's a more dangerous situation for him than for another individual.
Judge Murray Klein left bond set at $1.5 million for Quintero and Evans, $1 million for Smith, and $750,000 for Moss. Officer Quintero was already relieved of duty when police busted him last night. His job for the past year was to recruit other young people like himself to work on the force. If convicted on drug charges, Quintero will go to prison for a minimum mandatory time of 15 years. In Miami, Vicki Frazier, Channel 10 Eyewitness News.
Federal agencies responded to compromised local policing in Miami by dramatically expanding sophisticated undercover sting operations that infiltrated and exposed the financial and logistical backbone of drug networks. Agents posed as facilitators in money laundering schemes, offering services such as wire transfers, currency exchanges, offshore accounts, and investment fronts to attract traffickers seeking to clean massive cocaine profits, gathering recorded evidence of multi-million-dollar transactions and tracing funds back to cartel leaders. These stings simultaneously targeted smuggling networks by providing bogus logistical support, controlled buys, and transportation assistance, revealing interconnected distribution chains, stash houses, transportation routes, and import methods used by Colombian cartels. The proactive federal approach bypassed unreliable local assets, built strong cases through surveillance and informant recordings, and led to widespread indictments, asset seizures, and disruptions of both laundering operations and broader smuggling infrastructure that sustained the cocaine trade.
The FBI says this man, Carlos Eduardo Restrepo, is one of the main connections with the infamous Medellin drug cartel. He and 7 others, including former Metro Police Detective Al Lopez, were arrested in Miami as part of a massive 8-city sweep across the country. The FBI says it has been running an undercover operation tracing the flow of money and drugs from South America to New York, Chicago, the West Coast, and back to Miami.
Miami could possibly be described as the overseas corporate headquarters for money laundering for the Colombians, and from here the networks spread out to the other cities.
The 3-year investigation, codenamed Operation Cashweb, may snare as many as 120 people, and in the process, Attorney General Edwin Meese says it crushed 3 major money laundering rings which service Colombian cocaine cartels, including the Medellin cartel supposedly operated by Carlos Leder.
These cases provide bad news for the drug kingpins, because now they'll never be certain that they're not handing their cash over to undercover federal agents.
Altogether, more than $175 million in dirty money was laundered through the FBI sting and found its way to banks in Japan, Switzerland, and Panama. In Miami, suspects were pulled from their businesses and homes. The FBI says the Medellin cartel was only crippled today, which means at best the supply of money and drugs from Colombia to the United States was only temporarily stopped.
Florida residents are unwittingly supporting cocaine traffickers, according to federal agents. They have no idea that renting certain apartments sends laundered money back to the infamous Medellin cocaine cartel. That is, until the feds step in to confiscate the property.
The traffickers are doing this to make money. If we take the money away from them, we hurt them. It is as important as putting these people in jail.
Following a 3-year investigation, the U.S. Attorney's Office seized the 45-unit Venetian Isle apartments on Miami Beach and the 240-unit Kings Harbor complex in Plantation. A 2-story home in Miami Beach and a condominium unit in Bal Harbor that allegedly housed visiting traffickers all belong to Pablo Escobar Gaviria. Escobar, indicted for smuggling nearly 60 tons of cocaine into Florida, hid ownership in Panamanian front companies.
In South Florida alone, last year, we were able to seize property in the value of $130 million in the Florida area.
35 Paso Fino breeding horses and 35 acres of ranch land in Marion County, Florida was also confiscated. Federal authorities say it's owned by Juan David Ochoa Vasquez, who was indicted for a family-controlled cocaine manufacturing network. The total take for the day, market value $20 million. And there's more out there, but it's getting harder to find.
He had it all, power and wealth, but drug agents say 59-year-old Leonel Martinez got it all illegally with drug money. The $1.5 million home with a disco and movie theater built in at an exclusive Coral Gables neighborhood, the yacht, the real estate projects, including this huge West Dade development called Leomar Homes. Federal officials say it was an empire built on profits from a major drug smuggling operation. Arriving in federal court this afternoon, Martinez called the charges lies.
Money buys influence, and this individual was able to be accepted within this community for the reason that he had large amounts of money.
Martinez allegedly worked with this man, Julio Rodriguez, to smuggle drugs. As part of the 2-year federal investigation nicknamed Operation Crystal, agents say Martinez brought the illegal shipments in from Colombia through the Bahamas and into Miami, bringing in more than 23,000 pounds of marijuana and 1,500 kilograms of cocaine. Leonel Martinez has friends in high places. The street that runs through his housing development was named after him. Metro Mayor Steve Clark proclaimed a day in his honor upon the recommendation of the Spanish-American Chamber of Commerce. All this despite the fact that Martinez pleaded guilty to bribing a housing inspector back in 1987. That's when he and other members of the Latin Builders Association were charged with buying favors from building inspectors, but the accolades still kept rolling in.
He was a client a significant client.
Real estate attorney and Miami City Commissioner Victor De Jure was at least one local politician who received campaign contributions from Martinez.
It isn't fair to all of a sudden for something like this to happen and say you should have known when there's no reason to know.
But you knew he had given you a contribution.
Oh, no, certainly.
Federal officials say Martinez flaunted his money and influence until it finally caught up with him.
And the message of this case is that you may be able to purchase a position in the community and the economy initially, but eventually you will pay the price.
Federal agencies dramatically increased air surveillance over South Florida and the Caribbean to counter low-flying smuggling aircraft that evaded ground-based radar during the Miami drug wars. A key component was the deployment of tethered aerostats, large stationary radar-equipped blimps, such as the one nicknamed Fat Albert at Cudjoe Key in the Florida Keys, which became operational around 1980. These elevated platforms provided persistent wide-area radar coverage that could detect small planes and boats hugging the waves or terrain at long distances, feeding real-time data to U.S. Customs, Coast Guard, and DEA command centers in Miami for rapid interception and interdiction.
Early this morning, Customs and FBI agents began a roundup of 12 people authorities say helped transport nearly 20,000 pounds of cocaine into this country by sea and by air from Colombia.
It wasn't their cocaine, and they didn't sell cocaine on the streets. All they did was transport for other people and charge a fee for that transportation.
Basically a contract service?
Basically a contract service.
One of the men behind the scheme was fugitive Michael Mundy.
The Mundy Coley organization transported cocaine from Colombia in 19 separate shipments, using aircraft making direct flights, and aircraft in combination with small boats where the aircraft dropped the loads in the Bahamas.
Many of those shipments were attached to a highly sophisticated homing beacon that allowed the bad guys to find their drugs when authorities were not around.
This transmits a radio signal as well as having infrared light so they can see it at night with infrared goggles. So this shows how sophisticated they were.
Although only 12 people were arrested today, 7 more are already behind bars, and officials are searching for the rest of those who were named in today's indictment. Jose Grignan, News 4.
Here is tally ho. Load's 10 o'clock, very low.
I'm Bonnie Anderson. Federal law enforcement officials in South Florida disagreed with a report issued today in Washington calling their air interdiction efforts ineffective. They say their battle to stop drug smugglers from flying their deadly cargo into this area is successful.
They're running for the bushes.
Drug runners, they say, know that the high-tech hardware used by U.S. Customs and the Coast Guard can easily spot them, so they've changed their ways of doing business and fly to the Bahamas instead. The Customs and Coast Guard air interdiction teams, they say, make life difficult for drug smugglers.
The fact remains that if we pull out of where we are, if we stop doing what we're doing and being where we're at, that the smuggling operation would be wide open. It would go right back to cowboys and Indians like it was several years ago.
But in a report released today by the General Accounting Office in Washington, investigators called air interdiction costly and ineffective, saying more than half of all drug seizures result from prior intelligence, not because of sophisticated equipment. Only 10% of air interdiction missions result in seizures at all. The report concludes that with smugglers finding new ways to import their goods, the $204 million spent on air interdiction could be better used on programs to reduce the demand for drugs.
Agents had known for a while that lumber from Honduras might be the newest smuggling container for cocaine. They began targeting lumber shipments aboard the freighter Stena Mariner 10 days ago. They tracked last week's shipment to this Medley warehouse and made a seizure there last night. Then today, they went to work on 4 pallets of lumber that had come in aboard the Stena Mariner day before yesterday. They found what they knew they would. With their record seizure in hand, federal agents put on a little show and tell, a demonstration of how they discovered and recovered the cocaine. Dogs who had sniffed the stuff out were brought back to reenact that for cameras. Customs agents show how they had drilled into boards and how the cocaine stuck to the drill bits. Then, the boards were stuck into the X-ray machine that Customs has at Fort Everglades.
And what you're seeing is now the second kilo of cocaine inside the wood.
There was about 1,700 pounds of coke in this week's shipment, about 6,300 in the lumber that was seized last night. The grand total, a little over 8,000 pounds, 4 tons. That is a half-ton larger than the previous record haul, one made a year ago in West Palm Beach. Who done it?
There's a certain boldness displayed here. Obviously, it's a very powerful entity. Whether it's a Medellin cartel or not, I can't say at this time.
But that would be one strong suspicion.
That certainly would be a good guess.
And the guessing game goes on. Agents trying to keep tabs on ever-growing and ever-changing smuggling techniques, as News 4 Bob Baer reports.
In Tampa, city officials announced new money for drug education and said that Just Say No bumper stickers would go on all city cars. In Charleston, South Carolina, America's ambassador to talk to a summit meeting of business and civic leaders. In New York, an anti-drug task force became a permanent part of city government. In Little Rock, they launched a new anti-drug campaign in the schools. In Lauderhill, school kids launched balloons, 2,500 of them, with the message, "Refusing drugs is not so hard, just say no." But in Miami and Dade County, where drugs may well be public enemy number 1, not much was going on.
Be resolved that myself as mayor...
County Mayor Steve Clark read a proclamation about D-Day, but he seemed a little baffled about who to award it to.
So that word may go forth that Dade County says no to drugs. The recipient of this award, this proclamation will be presented at a later time, and thank you.